Hello, I'm honored that you've given me the opportunity to share some of these ideas with you today. I understand that we are all in marketing and you have different functions, you have different titles, you have different roles. But for today, I would urge you, set aside your current title and see yourselves as Chief Inspiration Officers for your brand, for SAP, because you all represent the brand. When you're speaking to customers, employees, your team, your colleagues, it's at that point, during that conversation, that you represent the brand. What is that conversation like? Is it inspiring? Is it uplifting? Is it motivating? What is it like? I'm a communications coach. I work with companies that touch your life every day. I also write about leadership and innovation and creativity. I wrote a book about Steve Jobs, and what I learned is that each and every one of us has the ability to be innovative, to be creative, to be inspiring, because we are all leaders. We all represent the brand at that moment of a conversation. And what's innovation? Innovation is simply a new way of doing things that results in positive change. That means you and I can be innovating all the time. Within a department, within a project, that's what innovation means, to move the company forward, to move a project forward. What I've learned through studying inspirational leaders is that each and every one of us has the ability to inspire, to get people fired up and excited about what we're doing and what we stand for as a brand. There are three qualities that I think all inspiring leaders share. So let's go through with them. Number one, all inspiring leaders are passionate. You cannot move a brand forward. You cannot move a project forward without being abundantly passionate about what it is that you're doing and the message. But you need to ask yourself, what is it that I'm genuinely passionate about? And it's not always the obvious. Steve Jobs certainly is passionate, but he's passionate about building tools that move society forward, that give people the opportunity to change the world. Steve Jobs once said, "Being the richest man in the cemetery doesn't matter to me. Going to bed at night saying, we've done something wonderful, that's what matters." Passion has always played a role in all the research that I've done on Steve Jobs, and I've interviewed people who have worked for Apple and people who knew him when he was a young entrepreneur just getting together with Steve Wozniak. Passion has always played a role. But I want you to watch a clip. It's a clip from 1997. Steve Jobs had been absent from Apple for about 12 years. Some of you may remember this. And he returned to Apple. It was in a really sorry state. In fact, it was only a few months from bankruptcy. I want to show you a clip. It's black and white. It's a little grainy, but I think it's really powerful because he talks to an informal group of employees, and you can tell it's informal because Steve Jobs is wearing shorts. When he really wants to dress up, he'll wear blue jeans and a mock and running shoes. But during this informal staff meeting, listen to the role that passion would play in revitalizing the brand.
Marketing's about values. This is a very complicated world. It's a very noisy world. And we're not going to get a chance to get people to remember much about us. No company is. And so we have to be really clear on what we want them to know about us. Our customers want to know who is Apple and what is it that we stand for. Where do we fit in this world? And what we're about isn't making boxes for people to get their jobs done, although we do that well. We do that better than almost anybody in some cases. But Apple's about something more than that. Apple, at the core, its core value, is that we believe that people with passion can change the world for the better. That's what we believe.
People with passion can change the world for the better. That's what he believes. That's what this guy believes. Richard Tate sketched an idea on the back of an airplane napkin. He was a client of mine about 4 years ago. He sketched an idea for a board game in which everyone could excel in one area or another. Some people were better at trivia or music or arts. Can you guess what game he created? Cranium. Walk into Cranium headquarters and you are hit with a wave of fun and enthusiasm and engagement, the likes of which I've rarely seen in corporate America. Now, I'm not expecting every corporate environment to look something like this that you see on the slide in front of you. But what's fascinating about a guy like Richard Tate is that that enthusiasm pervades the entire corporation, from the receptionist all the way to the CEO level. Everybody is passionate about the brand. But Richard Tate is not passionate about a board game. He's passionate about building self-esteem. He's passionate about bringing family and friends together. And so as I talk to people like this, I realize that they are not passionate about the obvious. They're not passionate about the product necessarily, but they are passionate about how that product moves society forward. Let's take a woman like Marissa Mayer, who's Vice President of Search Products at Google, someone who I've interviewed a couple of times for some of my articles in one of my books a few years ago. She loves technology, but she's passionate about search and what search means in terms of driving society forward. So when you have conversations with her, it's very interesting. She's very inspiring because she doesn't just talk about speeds and feeds and technology, but she talks about stories. She's passionate about the stories of people who are using search to improve education or medical care. But again, much like Richard Tate, she's not passionate about the physical product, but about what the product means to her customers and to the world, and to move society forward. So you need to ask yourself, what is it that I'm passionate about? And that's not just a fluffy exercise. I think it's very important because it really is the central focus of inspirational leadership. And if anything, it'll help you get through some hurdles. This gentleman is Bill Strickland. I spoke to him a few months ago. He's a social innovator. He's a founder of Manchester Creative Guild, which is an after-school program for underprivileged youth in Pittsburgh. And he said something very interesting about passion. He said, you know, Carmine, passion will not protect you against setbacks. Passion will not protect you against setbacks, but it will ensure that no failure is ever final. So what is it that you're passionate about? Passion is number one. Inspiring leaders are also visionary. A vision is not a mission statement, okay? It's a lot different. A vision is a picture of a better world made possible by your idea, your project, your department, your company. And a vision can change. There should be a company vision, but there also should be a vision on the department level or on a project level. It's sort of a roadmap that tells me where you're heading. Marcus Buckingham is a famous author, and he said, a leader succeeds only when they have a vision, a way to make people excited and confident about what comes next. You know, a lot of people forget that when man landed on the moon in 1969, it was actually the culmination of a vision, a bold vision first articulated by John Kennedy in 1961, that we're going to land a man on the moon by the end of the decade and we'll return him safely to Earth. You know, if John Kennedy had a Twitter account back then, his vision would have fit in a Twitter post. It was concise, it was bold, it was specific. We're going to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth by the end of the decade. So he actually set a deadline to it. So concise, bold, specific, and consistently communicated. A vision can inspire people. This woman is Wendy Kopp, somebody else who I've interviewed for some of my articles in the past. Very inspiring leader. She started Teach for America, but she was inspired herself by Kennedy's moonshot vision. So when she was an undergraduate at Princeton, she came up with her own moonshot, which was to reduce educational inequities. So again, everything starts with a vision. 20 years after Wendy Kopp articulated that vision as an undergraduate in college, 25,000 young men and women have gone through the program Teach for America, teaching in underprivileged and underserviced areas of our country. But again, it's all a vision that kept her going. A vision gives you direction. So as an employee or a colleague of yours, I expect some sort of vision for where I'm going. Let's go back to Steve Jobs, because I've written a lot about Steve Jobs, classic American entrepreneur. Even when they worked out of Steve Jobs' parents' house, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs had a vision for where they wanted to take the computer industry. And that vision was to put a computer in the hands of everyday people. So it doesn't matter to me whether you're working in a garage or a cubicle or the corner office. Everybody needs a vision. You need to communicate a concise, clear, bold, and specific vision for where you want to take your company, where you want to take your department. I also think that it's very important because a vision sometimes helps you see things that other people may have missed. In 1979, and some of you may know this story, Steve Jobs was touring the Xerox facility in Palo Alto, California, and he came across a graphical user interface. Imagine that. People were interacting with computers via colorful icons on the screen or something called a mouse. Well, Steve Jobs said something very interesting. Now, this was by Xerox was researching this technology at the time. Steve Jobs said that two people can see the same thing but interpret it differently based on their vision. Xerox, he said, could have dominated the entire computer industry, but they did not. Why? Because their vision was limited to making a new Xerox copy machine. Instead, his vision was focused on creating a tool that everyday Americans, that everyday people around the world could use to move society forward. So two people, again, can see the same thing and yet interpret it differently based on vision. So you need to ask yourself, not only what am I passionate about, but what is my vision? How am I going to move this company? How am I going to move society forward? I think passion, like Bill Strickland said, gives you the fuel to overcome setbacks. Passion is very important to give you energy and excitement and enthusiasm about what you do, and passion is contagious. So I need to see that from you, especially if you're a marketing professional. But where passion gives you energy and fuel, I think it's vision that points the rocket to its ultimate destination. So passion and vision go hand in hand. Finally, inspiring leaders are creative. We all have to be creative to come up with new ideas, don't we? But where does creativity come from? Well, Steve Jobs said creativity is just connecting things. Well, that sounds simple enough, but you know what? He's on to something. Harvard researchers spent 6 years studying the most creative individuals in the world, and they found that creative people do something called association. They associate ideas from different fields, and they apply those ideas to their field. Isn't that what Steve Jobs was trying to say when he said creativity is connecting things? Steve Jobs has been doing this his whole life. When he took calligraphy as a college student, they had no practical application to his life at the time, but it came back to him when he created the Macintosh. First computer with beautiful typeface and calligraphy and fonts. He's done this throughout his whole life. A lot of the great products that we see from Apple, for example, have come to him or at least have been inspired by his research into totally different fields. A lot of people don't realize this, but the Apple stores were inspired by the Four Seasons hotel chain. Steve Jobs sat around in a conference room with some of the people who were behind the Apple store, and they asked themselves, who offers the best customer service? It wasn't another computer store at the time. It was a hotel chain. That's why when you walk into an Apple store, you will not find a cashier, but you will find a concierge. Again, associating ideas from different fields. But it's not just putting together things. It's not just connecting things. I think it's connecting people as well. People with diverse experiences, people with diverse ideas. Listen to this quote from Steve Jobs. Part of what made the Macintosh great was that the people working on it were musicians and poets and artists and zoologists and historians who also happened to be the best computer scientists in the world. So again, creativity comes from not only connecting ideas and things, but also from connecting ideas from people who have diverse experiences as well. So creativity, vision, passion, I think they all go hand in hand. And now if I have a few minutes, I do want to talk to you specifically about some communication techniques that you can use today, right after this conference. So you can have creative ideas, but if you can't communicate those ideas effectively, then what does it matter? A neuroscientist once told me, Carmine, the brain does not pay attention to boring things. So how do you make your messages compelling and inspiring and exciting? Let me give you 3 ways. Number 1, stick to the rule of 3. The human mind can only consume about 3 or maybe 4 points in short-term memory. So if you're pitching a project, for example, or articulating or communicating your new idea, don't give me 22 points to remember. I can only absorb maybe 3 or 4 points. So stick to the rule of 3. Actually, the rule of 3 is a very fundamental concept in stage writing, script writing, comedy. Some jokes are often written in groups of 3, novels. So reporters know this, writers know this. If you're a presenter, you should know it too. Stick to the rule of 3. 3 main points is all I can absorb. Also, sell the benefit. Your idea may mean a lot to you, but it doesn't mean anything to me unless it helps me improve my life, my company, my department in some way. I learned this in journalism school, folks. So Journalism 101. You always have to ask yourself, what's in it for the reader? Because your reader is asking himself, what's in it for me? Why should I care? So remember, you're not just selling products. You're not just selling technology. You're selling hopes and dreams. If I'm your customer, for example, I don't care about your company necessarily. I don't care about your technology or your service. I care about myself. I care about my hopes, my dreams, my ambitions. Help me fulfill my dreams in that conversation, and you'll win me over. And finally, I know that a lot of you give PowerPoints. PowerPoints can be very effective or very dull. I suggest you think visually. Thinking visually simply means that images are better processed and better remembered than simply words and text alone. I'm not asking you to blow up all your PowerPoint slides, but I am suggesting that you think a little differently about how you frame and visualize key concepts. This is called picture superiority. Psychologists call it the picture superiority effect. It's a very simple concept. In essence, it means that when information is delivered verbally, people will remember about 10% of the information. Add a picture, add an image, and retention goes up to 65%. So if you want to be more effective when you're delivering those creative ideas, think visually, sell the benefit, and of course, stick to 3 main message points. And that will help you communicate that idea in a way that is actionable and will get people really inspired about your idea. Let me leave you with just one more quick story. A Disney executive who was charged with revitalizing the Disney brand turned to Steve Jobs, Disney's largest shareholder, and asked for advice. So Steve just had 2 words: dream bigger. And that's the advice I'm going to give you today. Give yourself permission to dream. Dream bigger about your role in the company, about the company itself, and about its technology and its ability to move society forward. Give yourself permission to dream. Be visionary, be passionate, be inspiring, be astonishing. Because as marketers, that's what we need from you. That's what we expect from you. Be the chief inspiration officer, not only for this brand, but for the people in your life. Thank you very much for giving me some time to share these ideas with you today.